This is you, working a normal pizza delivery job.
Keep the change.
You're exhausted. It's the end of your shift. You get home, count your tips, and drop them into your piggy bank. And then an idea hits you. What if I start a bank? A real licensed bank that holds people's money. So you rush to your computer to search for information. Now this is where we come in. In this video, we will show you step by step how anyone, including poor Susie over here, can start a bank.
Who are you calling poor Susie? I'm going to be rich.
Step 1. Choose your country. The US has one of the most rigorous bank licensing processes in the world, but we are going to break it all down for you. Step 2. Choose your charter type. Choosing your charter type is basically asking,
who do I want as my boss regulator?
who do I want as my boss regulator? When you start a bank in the US, the government doesn't let just anyone supervise you. A specific regulator gets assigned to watch over your bank, examine your books, and tell you what you can and can't do. Choosing your charter is choosing which regulator that will be. There are two main options. Option 1, National Bank Charter. Your regulator is the OCC. The OCC, Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, is a federal agency. Think of it as the federal government's bank police. If you pick a national charter, the OCC is your primary overseer for as long as your bank exists. The upside, your license is recognized in all 50 states automatically. You don't need separate permission to operate in Texas, then California, then New York. One charter covers the whole country. This is why big banks like JP Chase and Wells Fargo use national charters. The downside, federal rules tend to be stricter and more expensive to comply with. The OCC has high expectations from day one. Option 2, State Bank Charter. Your regulator is your state's banking department. Instead of a federal license, you get licensed by an individual state, say the Texas Department of Banking or the New York State Department of Financial Services. Your bank is technically a Texas bank or a New York bank. The upside, state regulators are often more flexible, sometimes have lower capital requirements, and tend to have more of a relationship-based approach, especially in smaller states. It can be easier and cheaper to get started this way. The downside, your license is technically only for that state. Expanding to other states requires additional steps. You also end up with two regulators, your state regulator plus either the FDIC or the Federal Reserve watching you at the federal level. So which should you pick? It depends on your ambitions. If you want to build a local or regional community bank serving one area, a state charter is usually the smarter starting point. Lower friction, more flexibility, faster to get going. If you're building something from day one with national ambitions, or if you're backed by investors expecting rapid multi-state expansion, a national charter may be worth the extra cost and complexity up front. Most first-time bank founders start with a state charter and convert to a national charter later, if they grow large enough to need it. It's a perfectly normal progression. Step 3. Assemble your organizer group. You need a founding group, typically called organizers, of at least 5 to 10 individuals with strong backgrounds in banking, finance, law, and the local community you intend to serve. Regulators will scrutinize each person's professional history, criminal record, and financial standing.
Scam?
One bad actor in the group can kill an application. Step 4. Raise de novo capital. De novo just means brand new. A de novo bank is simply a bank that has never existed before. You're building it from scratch, not buying an existing one. Raising de novo capital just means gathering the startup money your brand new bank needs before regulators will take you seriously. You need about $20 to $50 million.
What? 20 million? What?
Why does a bank need so much upfront money? Think about what a bank actually does. It holds other people's money. If someone deposits $10,000 with you and you go bust next month, that person loses their savings. Regulators are not going to let you open your doors unless you can prove the bank can absorb serious financial losses without touching depositors' money. That safety cushion is what the capital requirement is all about. It's essentially the regulator saying, Before we let you take money from the public, show us you have enough of your own skin in the game that if things go wrong, depositors are protected. So where does the money come from? You don't pull all this money from yourself. Almost nobody has $20 to $50 million sitting around personally. Instead, you raise it from private investors, similar to how a startup raises funding. These are typically wealthy individuals, high net worth investors, local business owners who want a community bank in their area, private equity or family offices, sometimes other financial institutions. In exchange for their money, investors receive shares, ownership stakes in your bank. So if someone puts in $2 million, they own a slice of the bank proportional to their investment. You'll typically need to raise $10 to $30 million in Tier 1 capital before you can even receive preliminary approval. What is Tier 1 capital? When regulators say they want $20 million in Tier 1 capital, they're being specific about the quality of that money. Think of it like this. Not all money counts equally in regulators' eyes. Tier 1 capital is the highest quality. It's essentially cash equity that is permanently available to absorb losses. It's the money that will still be there when everything goes wrong. It includes things like the actual cash investors put in, that is called paid-up share capital. Retained earnings, that means profits kept in the bank rather than paid out. Lower quality capital, Tier 2, includes things like certain types of debt, which technically has to be paid back someday and therefore isn't as reliable a cushion. Regulators want most of your capital to be Tier 1, real, permanent money, not borrowed funds dressed up to look like capital. Why $20 to $50 million specifically? The legal minimum is around $10 to $12 million, but in practice, regulators expect more, for a few reasons. You need operating runway. It takes 2 to 3 years for a new bank to become profitable. Staff salaries, technology, office space, compliance costs, all of that has to be paid before you're making meaningful money from loans and interest. If you raise only the bare minimum, you might run out of cash before you reach profitability. Regulators want a buffer above the minimum. If your capital drops close to the regulatory floor during those early, lean years, regulators can restrict what you're allowed to do or even shut you down. Raising more than the minimum gives you breathing room. Investors expect it. Sophisticated investors know that undercapitalized de novo banks fail at higher rates. Raising a more substantial amount signals that the founding team is serious and the plan is credible.
Oh, yes! I have all the money ready. Tier 1 capital, baby. What's next? I'm ready for the next step. Bring it on!
Step 5, write the business plan. The business plan is your way of convincing regulators you're not going to fail. When you apply for a job at a serious company, they don't just take your word for it that you're qualified. They want a CV, references, maybe a skills test. A bank business plan is essentially your CV for regulators. It's your way of proving, in exhaustive detail, that you know what you're doing and that your bank won't blow up and hurt depositors. But unlike a typical startup business plan written to excite investors, this one is written to satisfy very skeptical government officials whose entire job is to find holes in your thinking. What the business plan actually covers. 1. Who are your customers and why do they need you? This is called the market analysis, and it's the foundation of everything else. You need to answer, who exactly are you going to serve? A specific neighborhood? Small businesses in a certain industry? Farmers in a rural area? Why isn't an existing bank already serving them well? How many potential customers exist? And how much business can you realistically win? Regulators are deeply suspicious of vague answers here. Saying we'll serve everyone in Dallas isn't good enough. They want to see that you've identified a specific gap in the market and that real demand exists for what you're offering. Step 6, file your charter application. Filing your charter application is essentially submitting your formal permission to exist paperwork to the government. Up until this point, everything has been preparation. Choosing your structure, building your team, raising capital, writing your plan. Step 6 is where you actually knock on the government's door and officially ask for permission to open a bank. But wait.
Wait for what again? I need to submit these documents.
You actually have to file in multiple places simultaneously. Here's something that surprises most people. Filing your charter application isn't a single submission to one office. You're actually filing 2 or 3 separate applications at the same time to different agencies, and they all run in parallel. Filing number 1, the charter application. This goes to either the OCC or your state banking department, depending on what you chose in step 2. This is the application that says, please give us a banking license. Filing number 2, the FDIC deposit insurance application. This is non-negotiable and equally as important as the charter itself. The FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is the agency that insures bank deposits up to $250,000 per customer. Without FDIC insurance, you legally cannot accept deposits from regular people, which means you effectively cannot operate as a bank at all. The FDIC runs its own, completely separate review of your application. They want to see essentially the same things as your charter regulator, your business plan, your management team, your capital, but they make their own independent judgment. You can technically get your charter approved and still be rejected by the FDIC, which would leave you with a banking license you can't actually use. Think of it this way. The charter regulator asks, are you qualified to run a bank? And the FDIC asks, are you safe enough that we're willing to insure your depositors? Both questions need a yes before you can open. Filing number 3, Federal Reserve membership. If you're a national bank, this is automatic. You're required to be a Fed member. If you're a state bank, it's optional, but many apply anyway because Fed membership comes with certain privileges, like access to the Federal Reserve's payment systems and emergency lending facilities. Step 7, public notice and community review. Shortly after you file, your application becomes public. The regulator publishes a notice in newspapers, on their website, sometimes in official government registers, announcing that someone has applied for a bank charter in a specific location. This public notice period typically runs for 30 to 60 days, and it serves a very specific purpose. It gives the community, competitors, and activist groups the chance to formally object to your application. Anyone can submit a comment, and those comments go directly into your file and must be considered by the regulator. Common sources of objections include community groups arguing the bank hasn't committed enough to serving low-income areas, CRA concerns, existing banks in the area who don't want new competition, though pure competitive objections carry little weight, individuals who have background information on one of your founders, local politicians with concerns about the proposed bank's impact. Serious objections can significantly slow down or even derail your application. This is why experienced bank founders do extensive community outreach before filing, meeting with local officials, community groups, and civic organizations, so that by the time the public notice goes out, you've already addressed most concerns and have supporters ready to submit positive comments too. Step 8, conditional approval and pre-opening requirements. If approved, you receive a conditional charter. You must then hire your full executive team, CEO, CFO, Chief Risk Officer, Chief Compliance Officer. Build or lease your core banking infrastructure. Establish your BSA/AML compliance program. Obtain all final regulatory sign-offs. Complete final capital raise. You're in, but conditionally. Conditional approval is the regulator saying, great documents. Now go actually build the thing and prove to us it's real before we let any member of the public walk through your doors. Once you've completed all the conditions, you notify the regulator that you're ready.
I'm ready.
They then send examiners to your premises to conduct a pre-opening examination, essentially a final inspection before they hand over the keys. Examiners will physically visit your offices and interview your executive team, test your technology systems, review your BSA/AML program in detail, check that your physical premises meet requirements, verify capital is in place, review board minutes and governance documentation. Step 9, open for business. After everything, the years of preparation, the mountains of paperwork, the capital raising, the hiring, the technology builds, the inspections, this step is where your bank finally becomes real. You get the green light to open your doors and serve your first customer. But even this final step has 2 distinct parts: the final sign-off and then the enhanced supervision period that follows immediately after opening. getting the final sign-off. After the pre-opening examination, assuming the examiners found everything satisfactory, the regulator issues what's called a final charter, sometimes called the license to commence business. This is a formal document. It is the government officially saying, you are now legally authorized to operate as a bank in the United States, the capital transfer. On the day you receive final approval, the money sitting in escrow from your capital raise, that $20 to $50 million, is formally transferred into your bank's own accounts. This is the moment your bank goes from being a shell entity to being a capitalized, functioning financial institution. So congratulations, you did it, girl. You have a bank. You go, girl.
Guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look.
Susie, wake up, wake up. We'll be late for our morning shift.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well,